Well, hey there, everybody. This is Steve at Thousand Year Home. So I'm out on the farm finally. Of course, in other episodes, you'll see that I shut down my apartment and my little Ralph Waldo Emerson kind of environment. It's very earthy. Uh, but today I want to talk about the best way to cut out windows. And what I have here is 3 different methodologies. And some of the video footage that I'll be using, I shot early on before the burn ban was officially in place here in Texas. But I was still super careful while working, simply because I am knowledgeable of the wildfires that have been in Bastrop. And so I had a safety officer outside the container while I was cutting. And in addition, I cut a safety. I had used my tractor and I had actually dug a safety circle around the containers, as well as I had multiple fire extinguishers and water available. So this is the real deal, and it's just gotten worse here. I've wanted to make this video for a couple of months, but I had so much moving and so much other logistics to get done that I've kind of saved this. So I'll have a complete video, stop motion of me measuring out the windows, as well as the final results, what you could see right here. So you could see that it was well worth it. In addition, a lot of people have done, they've used welding for them to weld, and I would use bed frames. As if I was going to weld around a window, I would just spot weld bed frames around it. And I think that is superior to my idea. However, I am dealing with the fire hazard, as well as a lack of electricity out here. Now, I have 2 vehicles that would be able to handle small welders, so I could weld. But again, the fire risk, the risk versus reward is not there. In addition, I'm not building a mid-century modern style home. I'm building something that'll end up looking like a Spanish Mission home, something that's appropriate for South Central Texas. Similar to the Alamo and the missions, there's more than just the Alamo. There's a whole series of missions up and down the San Antonio River there. And so I'm using those for inspiration. I'm using the Native America Pueblo peoples for inspiration, but mostly the homes in Santa Fe. And so, but I'm building it all around the shell. So it's a mixed media home, the mixed material. So the shell is acting like the rebar, if you will, for the external as well as the internal. I'm not doing conventional framing. I'm doing something, I'm hand cutting my own timbers here and there. Just for flavor, but wherever I need machined dimensional lumber, I go and I buy it. But lumber is super expensive. So back to this whole thing of what's best to cut windows. So I did an experiment here, and you'll see where it'll come in later on, where I did 3 different kinds of methodologies. I bought a really good, and I still believe in this, Milwaukee, I believe it's called a nitrous Diablo blade or something to that effect. And you see it online, and people are cutting right through cast iron pipe, stainless steel pipe, cast iron and stainless steel pipe. But, and I don't know if you could see here, this thing broke within 6 or 8 inches, broke off all of the teeth right off of this carbide. And so I realized that while this blade, I still believe in it, but you would have to use, it would have to be on stationary metal that doesn't vibrate, and the walls of the Connex are so movable that it snags the teeth and breaks them off, probably pops them right off. The vibration was so bad while I was sawing these that my tripod grips gave up and smashed my camera on the ground, which you'll see later on there. So, and then of course, my favorite is the angle grinder, and I don't think there's anything like it. There's an angle grinder wheel, metal wheel, before, and here's the wheels after. So as you could see, it does quite a bit of cutting, but there was no substitute for this. And my safety officer said there's just too many sparks coming out, so the only thing she'd allow me to do is cut the corners in. And then I needed to use a Sawzall, which wasn't so bad once I arrived at the 18 teeth per inch conventional metal saw blade, which was able to withstand the vibration of the walls moving around. And if I was careful, wouldn't overheat. You can see that I bent that one a little bit from heat. And in addition, if I have you take a real close look, you could see that, I wrecked the teeth out of these, but I could get a whole window cut out of it. So in final analysis, what is the best method? Well, I wasn't careful because I framed my windows in wood, so I wasn't trying to be spot on. So for safety, I've got to say that this is what was safest. It didn't generate a single spark. It didn't generate globs of hot. As I cut through with the angle grinder, the epoxy paint would glob up into globs and drip off of the container, and the sparks were enormous. So this was the safest, and it got through. Now, I would have to say it was a third slower or more than the angle grinder. The angle grinder didn't mess around. If I was careful, I could just cut right through. And then lastly, and I really, these nitrous Diablo blades, man, I watched videos. I was so excited. I thought it'd be like butter cutting through the window, but it wasn't. So I snapped them off within 8 inches. You could see that they're all broken. So without further ado, let me go ahead and drop in the actual videos. I did stop motion and regular video. First thing I'll do is a real time. How long does it take me to cut a 24 by 30 inch window frame out? And I'll do that in real time. I already started with a couple of cuts. And then we'll talk about layout. We'll talk about my little experiment where I used all 3 different blades. I even used a battery powered angle grinder, and which has a thinner blade. And it's okay for fine edge draw. If I got too crazy, I could cut something in, but I couldn't imagine cutting a whole door out with that. So in final analysis, if you want to be safe and you're out in nowhere, again, my trucks have power, so I was able to plug in a powered Sawzall, and I was able to use these. I went through about 6 blades for all of the windows and doors. But let's go ahead and take a look at the actual video. So you can see I already start with probably 40% of the window cut out. And just to jump to the chase, it takes about 2 minutes for me to finish this up. So minus the layout part of it, probably 5 minutes for me to take a angle grinder and cut out a 24 by 30 inch window. In that, you'll see that I need to change the wheels a couple of times, right? So you can see that I'm getting a little sloppy as I'm cutting the window out, but it's actually because the sides of the container are pinching and they're forcing my cutting wheel off of track. And that's also, I deliberately left some stubs here and there to keep the window from falling in on me. But the pinching of the Connex wall also pinches the wheel. So you can already see that I've lost maybe a third of the size of my wheel in just a few seconds there. So one thing I will say that's and probably an incorrect thing that I did, I took off the spark arrestor and the shield that, as well as the handle from the angle grinder. But it was just too difficult for me to manipulate all of the different directions that I needed to have with the safety equipment in. So this particular angle grinder I would not recommend. Again, I lost another 15% of the wheel there. So now you'll see that I'll just finish cutting up the little stubs I left to hold it in. And it's one I can't see very well with all of the safety equipment that I have on there. The respirator is because the epoxy, as I cut through it with the angle grinder, doesn't smell real good. And it did make big globules that would drop down, very hot globules, both on the outside and the inside. So you'll see in a second here that I'm just finishing this up. Even when I went with the Sawzall, I had to still use the angle grinder in the corners to cut all the slits to start the whole process. The last thing I left was a little wings at the bottom, hinges if you will, for me to push the window out. And so once I cut those loose, lo and behold, yay! So here we go. I'm going to go ahead, and the next video will be measuring the windows and how I did all of that. And I physically use the window spaces itself and put those in place. One reason I did this rather than do a lot of physical measurements with my laser level, which I did, is I wanted to think about how I was going to install the windows with the wood. So not only was I measuring the windows, but I was also bringing in the idea of how to reinforce the walls as I cut them open with the various 4x4s, as well as the dimensional lumber that I did purchase, and super expensive to purchase the dimensional lumber. So, but I did lay out the windows and it got all going. And you'll see here I make my first cut with the angle grinder, and I'm leaving, going in and out, to actually ask Leah, the safety officer, how many sparks, if she's concerned. And she tried to make a video of it because she didn't like the amount of sparks. Now, I took a lot of steps to protect this thing. But the final analysis, once I make it through this windows, is that she was just uncomfortable. So one advantage, here you go, she asked me to use the Sawzall. So this is the experiment that I did where I compared the various 3 methodologies for cutting the windows in. Now I did have to use the angle grinder each and every time to start the corners. And from there, I went and I compared the angle grinder, and the safety officer was observing it on the outside. Here I went with a Sawzall, and I went with the nitrous blades. And you could see that I broke those within inches. And now I'm back to I'm back to using the angle grinder, but because I'm above my head, I put on my leather jacket because the sparks are all over me. Again, criticizing my lack of safety equipment. Here I switched to the battery-powered Sawzall and the battery-powered angle grinder, both of which could not really get very far through the thicker back walls of the conics. The steel was a little thicker gauge on the back here. So bad was the vibrations from all of this work that my camera fell down, my tripod grips loosened up, and my camera smashed to the ground. So, and everybody who does any of these YouTubes always loses a camera during construction. You can't help it. But the vibration was intense, and so intense that I ended up, as I recommend, using the 18 teeth Sawzall as the best solution. And but I did cut out all of the windows, and I got a very functional place, and it just looks amazing. So following all my directions, using a safety officer, the 18 teeth per inch regular Sawzall, I was able to get all of these windows done, and it looks great.